started. All right, welcome everybody to our Lunch and Learn today on implementing climate change action with Hamilton Community Enterprises and the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. Before we get started, please ensure that your microphones are muted. There will be a question and answer period about 1:45, where we'll open up the floor for any questions, and you can unmute yourselves and ask your question using your microphone, and then also have a follow-up question if needed. And this Lunch and Learn is being recorded for those of us that couldn't make it today, so they can watch it at a later time. So I'd like to welcome our guest speakers today. We have Jeff Cowan, President and CEO of Hamilton Community Enterprises. Jeff is a forward-thinking leader who brings a wealth of experience to the energy and telecommunication industries in both the private and public sectors. A professional engineer with over 20 years experience, he has worked among both startups and some of Canada's largest utilities. He is passionate about driving better outcomes for communities and consistently challenges the status quo to inspire growth, innovation that enhance customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, and environmental sustainability. In 2015, he joined Hamilton Community Enterprises, known as HCE, as its Chief Technology Officer. He quickly rose to the position of President and CEO, leading its commercial operating subsidiaries, HCE Energy and HCE Telecom. Under his leadership, HCE has grown to become one of the leading providers of clean and renewable energy solutions and high-speed internet services in the region. Welcome, Jeff. We also have Ryan Rogers, the Vice President of Corporate Development at Hamilton Community Enterprises. Ryan is an accomplished energy systems architect and executive leader, deeply passionate about advancing sustainable energy solutions and climate resilience. Prior to joining HCE as Vice President of Operations at Parity, Ryan played a pivotal role in guiding product development, IT strategies, business expansion, project management, and operational enhancements. His career in sustainable energy systems began here in Hamilton, where he graduated from McMaster University with degrees in mechanical engineering, business, and a Master of Applied Science. As part of his master's, he conducted groundbreaking research on integrated community energy systems. This research focused on designing and implementing innovative solutions that empower communities to efficiently share energy resources and significantly reduce carbon emissions. While originally from Toronto, he lived in downtown Hamilton for several years during his studies and is passionate about the city's prosperity. He's very excited to be back working in the community, and we are very excited to have you here today. We also have Lynda Lukasik, Director, and Trevor Imhoff, Senior Project Manager, both from the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Lynda to get us started with the presentation.
Thanks so much, Sylvia, and thanks everyone for joining. Really excited that you're here to hear more about Hamilton Community Enterprises and also how the work that they're doing links very directly to Hamilton's climate action strategy and the work that we do in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. So I'm going to give you, between Trevor and I, we're going to give you a brief introduction to the Office of Climate Change Initiatives and Hamilton's climate action strategy before we hand it over to Ryan and Jeff. So next slide, please. So just to start, just want to make sure that you all know the team in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. We like to say we're a small but mighty team in the office. We do our best to make good things happen. And so just in the picture here, you've got Trevor with us on the call today, but there's Trevor pictured. He's a senior project manager with the team, and me, I serve in the role of director. We also have Beatrice Ekoko, she's a project manager with us, and Catherine Winkleman, who's a senior project manager with the team. And I do want to say we have one vacant position. We have a project manager role, and we're looking to temporarily fill that position. So if you know anyone who's interested in the work that we do, that job posting closes at 4 p.m. today. So just want to make you aware of that. Just a little bit more about the office and the mandate of the office. We've got a central role, and maybe just to back it up a bit, you'll all likely be aware that in March of 2019, our city council declared a climate emergency. And on the heels of that declaration, there was lots of work unfolding to develop Hamilton's climate action strategy, which includes a detailed mitigation and adaptation plan. So for us sitting in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, we have a core role to now oversee and track implementation of Hamilton's climate action strategy. I always like to emphasize that that strategy is a community-wide plan. So we've got lots that we track on the corporate side, but we're also paying attention to community-wide efforts as well as we work towards achieving net zero carbon by 2050, if not much sooner than that. We have a core responsibility to track, facilitate implementation, accelerate it where we can. We also report annually to City Council and to the community on progress being made with Hamilton's climate action strategy. Many of you will have been, hopefully we're not harassing you, but we're always looking for updates, data and information so that we can track in detail and report on progress with all of the actions in the mitigation and adaptation plans. That gets reported out to council on an annual basis, and we are scheduled to be in front of the GIC on June 11th with that annual update. We also do other important reporting, and Trevor leads the charge on this piece. We report through the Carbon Disclosure Project, and that's a global initiative where a detailed questionnaire is completed each year, and along with a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for our community. And that information is assessed and we're graded as a community on how we're doing with our climate action. And I'm proud to tell you that for multiple years, we've ranked in the A range in the grading that we receive for progress, but also for the approach that we're collectively taking as a community on that work. Our team also does a lot of work to review and comment on both internal and external reports and policies. Many of you on the call have probably forwarded reports and things for us to review and comment on, and we do that to hold that information up against the climate action strategy and to make sure that there's consistency there in all of us collectively working to make the actions in the strategy become reality. Excuse me. We also guide or lead on a number of climate-related projects, programs, and policies. And next slide, I think we've got a little bit of an overview of those. So we do have key priority focus areas that we zero in on as a team, and that was partly when our office was formed in late 2022. It's overwhelming. There's a lot to do. So we did go to council in early 2023, and we established some priority focus areas. So in our early days, we spent some time setting up governance structures. So we do now have an externally facing community climate change advisory committee. They're very active. They've done some great work recently on green building standards, for instance. We have an internal director level climate change initiative steering committee, and those bodies are important in helping to support the work that we do. On the innovation side, we oversee and administer the city's climate change reserve, and that reserve is replenished annually to the tune of $2.5 million. And it's there to support city-led initiatives, but also efforts on the community side. And it's designed to support not just innovation, but other efforts that help to realize the outcomes that we're trying to achieve through our climate action strategy. And I want to say stay tuned, because we will probably within the week be releasing the 2025 call for applications internally to the reserve. And if you haven't taken a look before, encourage you to do that. We also, obviously, we do a lot of work on community climate outreach. We try to get out to events. More recently, we've tried to introduce a more structured approach to community and in internal engagement. So we've been doing learning sessions with staff, and we've got plans to do a series of community engagement sessions in locations like the public library and its various branches. So stay tuned for that as well. Carbon budgeting is a key piece of the work that we do, and I'm glad we've got Trevor on the call. If anyone has specific questions about carbon budgeting in the Q&A, that's Trevor's baby. And that's essentially a tool that tracks greenhouse gas emissions and holds that up against municipal finances. And ideally, it starts to guide decision making. We establish a fair carbon budget for our community with that goal of ratcheting down over time, but paying attention to carbon and greenhouse gas emissions when we're making municipal decisions. We also do work on the green building side of things. So our team, Catherine Winkleman, and I think I saw Catherine join the session today. Senior Project Manager Catherine is leading the pilot Better Homes Hamilton deep energy retrofit opportunity, and that's a pilot for up to 50 homeowners to access up to $20,000, 0% loan to make significant improvements to their homes. We're really hoping people will make that shift to a heat pump so that they're not relying on fossil fuel for heating and cooling. We're also leading an effort to develop a net zero carbon standard for all new municipal facilities. And again, Catherine is leading that effort, and we're doing that in partnership with the Office of Energy Initiatives within Public Works. And that will be an important piece too for us as a municipality to show leadership on the buildings side of things. And then very quickly, we've got urban greening as another priority focus area. And very quickly, our team tracks community-wide tree planting. Forestry folks keep us up to date on what the corporation is doing. We track what community partners are doing. That's part of our work. We've also got some other innovative pieces happening. And again, it's Catherine who's convened an internal working group of city staff, and that team is working through ways to pursue creative green infrastructure in our community. So stay tuned. I know they're talking about lots of exciting possibilities that hopefully will roll out in reality in the not too distant future. It's a bit of a whirlwind, but I'm going to hand it over now to Trevor to provide you with more information about the strategy and the work that we're up to. Trevor.
Great. Thanks so much, Lynda. And thanks, Sylvia. And thanks, everyone, for attending this Lunch and Learn. I'm going to spend less than 2 minutes because I want to pass it along and leave lots of time for our experts, Jeff and Ryan. And really, I'm here just to provide some preface of how our climate change action strategy and how folks like HCE are really helping to advance some of the actions. And so when we talk about Hamilton's climate action strategy, we're really talking about two main plans. We have our Community Energy and Emissions Plan, which is our climate mitigation plan, as well as we have our climate change impact adaptation plan. From an emissions profile perspective, I think we all can admit and know Hamilton is a very unique municipality. Our major sources come from, I call them the big three: industry, transportation, buildings. However, in a net zero future, every ton of greenhouse gas emissions matter. And I think Jeff and Ryan are going to present in some really great vision for the future of how to reduce emissions and how we can reduce emissions, both from an industrial and building perspective. Just very quickly, again, these are our community-wide greenhouse gas emission trends. Our baseline is 2006. We report every year, 2 years behind. I'm not sure if Lynda mentioned, but we will be reporting our updated annual report this coming June 11th to General Issues Committee. We'll provide an updated community-wide and corporate greenhouse gas emissions. And you'll see there has been progress made since our baseline. However, we've flatlined really over the past, I'd say, 10 to 11 years. And so we're really excited and interested with great innovation coming from HCE and other community organizations and businesses to accelerate that net zero future. Similar trend, but I think more steady trend on our corporate greenhouse gas emissions. You'll see a slight uptick of greenhouse gas emissions over the past couple of years. That's for a few reasons. One is the dirtying electricity grid in Ontario, and which really shows the importance of putting in more local renewable resources. And I don't want to steal their thunder, and they'll be providing some great information around our existing district energy in the future for that as well. Through our Hamilton Community Enterprises staff. Just very quickly showing this slide, not to scare anyone, but we do have a science of climate change. It was a global and regional climate model downscaled to the local level. That is our best estimate of what our future climate scenario. And just in 3 words, very quickly and simply, it is going to get warmer, it is going to get wetter, and is going to get wilder. And we need to prepare for these inevitable climate change impacts. So within our community energy and emissions plan, we have 5 low carbon transformations. And I think this will be the focus of today's presentation, but not to lose sight, as equally important is our adaptation plan within our climate action strategy, including preparing our infrastructure, our people and health, protecting our natural environment, as well as protecting our economy and the energy economy as well. So before I pass it on to Jeff and Ryan, really, we focus here on the low carbon transformation number 4, revolutionizing renewables. But I think it's very easy to argue that HCE provides great benefits to our existing, as well as with their future vision of district energy and the Bayfront, the ability to reduce emissions, both from increasing or revolutionizing renewables, but also from a buildings perspective, transforming our buildings, as well as helping our industry decarbonize as well. And these are just a few of our low carbon scenario targets that are very applicable to Hamilton's community enterprises, as well as our overall vision to develop a next generation electrical grid, as well as the intent on to decarbonize and expand the HC downtown district energy system. With that, I'm pleased to pass it on to Jeff Cowan. Please go ahead, Jeff, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Trevor. Ryan will get the screen up there. Next slide there, Ryan. Thanks everybody for the opportunity. Just to touch on a point that Trevor made about Hamilton is a unique municipality. And in that, as HCE, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes up front just to give a bit of a background on the organization. But we do have this vision and a passion towards what we like to refer to as Hamilton's advantage. And there's a really unique opportunity in and around the fact that we have an industrial corridor that is a large consumer of energy, and as well a fantastic opportunity to transform to the future, so closely adjacent to urban boundary of intensification. And it's a really unique scenario that is not found broadly at this scale across Ontario and across Canada. And we really feel this Hamilton advantage is really around this concept of becoming a next generation energy powerhouse. But it's an all boats rise with the tide vision, whereby we can play a key role in enabling Hamilton's climate action strategy, while at the same time looking towards helping enable this transition that is happening in Ontario's energy market that will encourage new infrastructure investment, and also long-term economic and prosperity and growth in the territory. We really believe there's an intersection where there's benefit on all parties. And so, next slide there, Ryan. And so as Hamilton Community Enterprises, we're this really unique animal, and it's we have a very fortunate opportunity. We are a private for-profit corporation. We compete in what we refer to as the non-regulated energy market. So non-regulated is everything that's not the Electra, the World of Wires, your local distribution company, your hydro utility, or your natural gas company. Basically, everything else fits in this banner of non-regulated energy. So that's renewables, that's district energy, that's storage, that's all other kinds of technologies in that bucket. And we are a non-regulated telecommunication company. We build fiber optics. We build mission-critical networks that enable a lot of municipalities, essential services, public works, education, healthcare. And the really cool thing is that we're wholly owned by the City of Hamilton. The City of Hamilton is our sole shareholder. Next slide there, Ryan. And since the incorporation of the business, in these portfolios, we've grown to be about over 200 clients strong. Our anchoring opportunity started with innovation in Hamilton. It started with innovation within city departments that had a challenge or had an opportunity, and they looked towards this entity to try and solve a challenge or deliver a solution. And what happens is if it's meaningful to the city of Hamilton, then there's good chance it's meaningful abroad to adjacent municipalities and to other commercial customers. And so this has kind of been a wheel of a cycle of innovation that we've been able to foster is innovate locally, we operationalize, and then we go out, we commercialize, and we sell it abroad. And what it actually means is the bulk of the revenues we generate actually come from outside of the community of Hamilton, or they come outside of just business that we do directly with the city of Hamilton. And so next slide there, Ryan. And so what we look towards doing is we look towards saying, okay, well, how do we generate benefit? How do we provide value, not just back to the city proper as our main investor, but how do we look more broadly about what do we do? What is our opportunity to do good in the community? And so we take a more holistic approach into how we generate value. It's not just for economic purposes, right? We do need to show that we are providing an economic benefit back to the city as an investor, but we have a more holistic lens where we also try and say, okay, well, where can we do something where we benefit or we put value on the outcome more so than the profit? And that's an idea of what we'll do on a social side. And we've done a lot of things with community internet. We've done a lot of things on energy consulting. We've done a lot of engagements with the universities, college, and the various schools in the territory where we really put a focus on what kind of social return can we provide. And then as well on the environmental side, we feel it's very important that we are well aligned to the key priorities of the municipality to try and ensure we're helping drive this forward momentum towards innovating and helping transition Hamilton to the next generation energy economy that we see. Next slide, right? And so in that regards, what we are highlighting here is just our alignment. We always want to make sure that we are tied to the priorities of council. We want to make sure that we're tied to the long-term strategic plan of the city, and just where we take a look at sources of information and influence that help guide our strategies, what we want to invest into, and how we go by operating locally within the community. Right, next slide. And then so just lastly, before I start handing it off to Ryan, and he can more specifically talk about HCE as a provider of district energy and what that means within downtown Hamilton, and then our vision more broad about new investment opportunities into district and renewable technologies. But principally what helps ground this is there's a transition that's happening in our power market, okay? And what's shown in that light blue box is generally today how most people consume energy. And how we consume it is in a very centralized format. It's really top down, okay? It's a one-way flow of energy, and it's very integrated and it's very closed system, okay? What we're seeing transition and what we see the market moving towards, and this is where we see Hamilton having this wonderful advantage, okay, where all boats can rise with the tide, is a vision towards what the power market of the future looks like. And what that in the green box represents is something that all of a sudden becomes very decentralized, okay? It's not one great big giant central plant generating energy coming through transmission lines and then distribution lines to the user. It's where you're going to have this opportunity where people can become what they refer to as prosumers, not just where you're consuming, but you're also participating, where you could be supplying back into. The energy grid tomorrow is going to become bidirectional. It's going to become very distributed. You're going to see a lot of new technology start to emerge, renewable, solar, energy storage, the transition of electrification. And then what you're going to be able to see is people are going to be able to participate in a way that they've just never been able to historically. And this is where we get so excited. And this is where we see this big opportunity for Hamilton to help lead not just in Ontario, but in Canada, about being on the forefront to help embrace these investments that we are going to see. We're competing against other municipalities and other jurisdictions to try and become the most favorable place for people to want to invest into this type of infrastructure going forward. And this is where we really look forward to kind of sharing that vision and passion and engaging kind of collaboratively to make sure that, you know, our community, we're able to put our best foot forward to help lead and maximize the benefits that are going to come from this transition. So in saying that, we'll talk about one resource that's been in that green box in Hamilton for over 20 years. And we're going to start about talking about the downtown district energy system and how that becomes a great kind of case study for then what we see is a really big whale of an opportunity coming down the pipe with the redevelopments happening on the Bay Area industrial front there. So Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, so I'll kick things off. Like Jeff mentioned, I think the real purpose of today's lunch and learn is really just to give some background on our existing energy assets and how they dovetail into that vision of the future that we have here on the right side of the screen. But then also how that directly links to the city's goals as it relates to the climate action plan, specifically relating to transformation 2 and 4, which is around revolutionizing renewables and transforming our buildings. So I'm going to kick things off by talking about our district system. So Hamilton's district energy system is located in downtown. You can see here, we've got this map here. Hopefully everyone can see kind of the details here. But on the left side here, you've got, or the top, I should say, you've got York Boulevard coming across, sweeping through right to left to right. You've got King, you've got Main. At the bottom here, you've got City Hall, Cops Coliseum is located in the middle. And then over here on the far right side, you actually have the ISF Police Services Building. Quick background on district energy. What district energy basically is similar to how a building has a boiler and a chiller, or a boiler or a furnace, I should say, and an air conditioner. And then you have pipes in your building or your house that basically run that to various vents or fan coil units to basically heat or cool your apartment or your house. District energy is the exact same concept, but done over city blocks and longer distances. So what we have is we have centralized heating, centralized cooling, located at our plant here at 79 Bay Street, which is right attached to Sir John A. Macdonald. So that plant basically generates lots and lots of heating. And then we actually send hot water through pipes underground to, jumped ahead there, sorry, to various customers throughout Hamilton. And the red lines here represent the hot water, and the blue lines down here represent the cold water. So you can see here we're supplying hot water and chilled water to a variety of buildings. Some buildings up here on the left, Sir John A. Macdonald to name one, and then Victoria Park Community Towers, they only get hot water. They only have heating. But a lot of the other buildings to the core here have hot water and chilled water supplied. Some quick stats on our district energy system. So we basically have 15 buildings connected, totaling at 2.5 million square feet. To give kind of an equivalency to that, that's about 1,200 semi-detached homes. So it's quite a bit of area. It's a diverse client base. We've got municipal buildings, including the City of Hamilton, institutional, such as McMaster, commercial buildings. We've got a few offices attached to the system. We've also got a couple of residential buildings in the form of Victoria Park Community Housings, but also Templar Flats, which is a core urban development right on King William next to John Hewson there. A big part of district energy is you get this idea of scales of economy. So rather than having all these individual boilers and chillers in all these buildings that you have to basically optimize on a decentralized basis, by centralizing our basically production of this energy, we get higher scales of economy, which means we can pass on cost savings to our clients. You can see that here where HCC and cooling rates are typically 20% lower than traditional systems. And that's a huge value when it comes to the affordability. In terms of low carbon transformations, I want to call out a couple aspects on this. The first one is that because we've centralized the generation assets, we're avoiding this idea of carbon lock-in. So if I want to basically update the energy efficiency of my generation, I can do that in one place. I don't have to go to every building and update every boiler and every chiller. I can kind of make that transformation happen in a centralized location. My clients don't see any difference. They have the same great service they've had over the course of the previous decade. The other part of low carbon transformation is that because we have these power purchase agreements, basically these energy contracts with these clients, it gives us unique ways to help our clients basically deploy energy efficiency projects. And one of them is that we can finance decarbonization projects at no cost to building owners by taking that decarbonization project, whether it's an envelope, improvements around like glazing, exterior profiles, retrofits there. It could be a building automation system refresh. It could be just a matter of, replacing some of the in-suite elements like the radiators or the AC units in the ceiling and making them more efficient. We can take the costs associated with that and roll that into our energy contract and then kind of charge them over the course of a very long contract so they don't have to pay up front for that type of work. And the reason that's a no cost solution is that when they get energy efficiency, their demands drop, the client's demands drop, which means they pay less for energy, right? So we're then charging them less on a reoccurring basis. They net out in a positive income. The other part of, where district energy is really affordable and competitive I want to talk to is this idea of this like capital analysis. So this analysis here, this is indicative pricing that we actually just shared with a client looking to expand the district system later this year. At the top there, you can see the heating and cooling rates at $1 per megawatt hour basis. So that's just like what you would pay per consumption. Again, you can see the cost savings there compared to a business as usual, which would be, in this case, the business as usual was a boiler and chiller plant. The thing I really want to draw everyone's attention to, though, is this idea of upfront capital costs. So if I'm a building developer and I want to build, in this case, it was about 120, 130 suite apartment building in downtown Hamilton, I'm going to typically have to spend money up front to put, mechanical equipment, boilers, chillers, cooling towers in that building. Typically for this size of building, we calculate that to be around $2.2 million. If they connect to the district system, there's no cost up front. Basically, because they're connecting to our centralized plant, all they have to pay is for the connection to that system, and we'll actually charge them that cost over a 25-year period. So they're not paying any money out of the door to basically connect to our system and get that same value that they would typically get from, installing those assets themselves. Similarly, when you look at the maintenance cost side of this, they're also reducing their maintenance costs compared to the business as usual, because they're no longer paying for the maintenance associated with that boiler, chiller, and the units inside that building. But I think the most important one that I wanted to draw out here was this idea of an annual reserve fund. So if you ever owned a condo or lived in a condo where you have to pay condo fees, the term reserve fund probably is familiar to you. It's basically the condo fee is condo corporation saves money every year to account for the end of life replacement of all their assets. Basically being that, we built this new condo, it's brand spanking new, but after 25 years, we're gonna have to replace a bunch of the things in it. And we're gonna start to basically put savings aside every year so that at that 25-year mark, we can replace that equipment. With a district energy system, you don't have to do that because you're not buying that equipment up front. Instead, you're connecting to our system. So you actually can take that money you would normally put aside to a reserve fund and use it for other things. Or you can reduce that cost on the owners or the apartment renters. So I want to show this because I think it's an important part of how, to the parts earlier from Trevor and Jeff, this vision about sustainability and kind of building these integrated energy systems can also drive affordability in the community. Pivoting from the district system, we'll talk quickly about Hamilton's microgrid. So you can see here, very similar map of the district system that we had on the prior slide, but I've got this yellow line here now. And what this yellow line is a 13.8 kilovolt distribution system. So basically an electrical distribution system that goes all the way from City Hall through the main block here that includes the Art Gallery, the Convention Center, the Ellen Fairco Building, Hamilton Place, the Concert Hall, up to First Ontario Center, takes a left and goes up Bay Street to get to 79 Bay, which again is our district plant, and then also goes across to get to the library. This is a very interesting system. There's a lot of history, and I won't spend too much time on it, but this is the only system of this kind we're certain all of Ontario, potentially all of Canada, where you've got this microgrid system that basically aggregates or puts multiple buildings behind one master meter. And the value of this is that you can see here 6 of HC's district energy clients are also connected to our microgrid, and that represents 2 megawatts of load. If you're familiar with electric grids, the important thing about how much load is associated with the system is it changes the rate structure associated with all these buildings. If you own a home or if you rent an apartment, you're typically considered Class B. So you pay that time of use pricing that you're familiar with. It's 14 cents typically, but overnight it can get down to as low as 8 or 9 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on the jurisdiction you live in. When you're above a megawatt of load, so when you're a really big consumer, you get a special rate. It's called Class A rates. And what we're essentially able to do with this microgrid is take these 6 clients who typically would be Class B clients and make them Class A. And the value of that is that with Class A clients, if we do something called peak shaving, which basically means we're mitigating the consumption of those clients during a few days of the year, the hottest days of the year typically, they can pay far less for their energy. And that's exactly the case here, where basically we have a 3.5 megawatt cogen, which is a combined heating. It creates heat and electricity that can fully island this load. So basically when we turn the cogen off, the grid doesn't see any of those 6 buildings. They basically disappear from the grid. They show as zero consumption. And in doing that, we're able to reduce the electrical rates for those 6 clients by 30% plus on an annual basis. And currently our goal is actively working to expand the footprint of this microgrid and connect it to additional buildings in the downtown core, but also putting renewable generation behind the meter, in support of, again, the climate action, 5 low carbon transformations, specifically looking at revolutionizing renewables. This is a key component of that in our mind, where we have this microgrid, we have this ability to basically pass on savings to the customers. We'd like to expand on that capability by adding solar, battery, other renewable forms of generation behind it as we grow the footprint of the demands. So that's the end of our quick discussion on the downtown energy infrastructure. I'm going to quickly run through this idea that we have of Steelport, which is about creating Hamilton's energy advantage. I'm going to try and wrap it up in 5-ish minutes so that we have a bit of time at the end for questions. But given that legacy understanding now of the assets that HC already owns and operates and has done so for the last 20 plus years in downtown Hamilton, the key idea of Steelport, which I'll talk through kind of the size and scale of that development in a second here, is that we already have a history of doing this downtown Hamilton, and we can already understand the value it creates in terms of the decarbonization potential, the economic advantage it creates, and also the resiliency that it provides, the residents of downtown Hamilton. We want to take all of those good elements and bring them to the Steelport project. And if we feel that if we kind of stick the landing on it and focus on this idea of public-private partnerships between developers like Slate, who are very much bought into this idea of an energy strategy, as well as other potential investors who are looking to, bring manufacturing and logistics and other types of job creation to Hamilton, it really has ability to make this development be the new standard in terms of what integrated energy strategy looks like in North America. So the highlights are there around, the potential scale of private sector investment, how it overlays with the Bay Area climate action plan, and also this idea that we want to establish a local integrated energy strategy to guarantee affordability for both the Steelport development.
Alan?
Oh, we got someone.
I have
a client who
Gonna mute. Got there for me. Sounds good. Thank you, Sylvia. And also establishing that energy affordability for the broader region there. So for those who don't know, Steelport is the redevelopment of the old Stelco lands. So here you can see Stelco as it currently is today. 800 acres, obviously had a lot more buildings and general property area in the past, but over the course of the last 5 years, they've started to flatten out a lot of the parcel, and basically you can see a lot of the area now is primed for development. What Slate is hoping to do with this 800 acres is transform it into a new advanced manufacturing and logistics hub for all of Hamilton. They've got a phased approach to rolling out this plan, and you can see here that it's quite substantial, right? Key to it is this kind of the high level areas, stats. You've got 800 acres of redevelopment potential. That's essentially the size of Central Park in Manhattan. So talking about huge opportunity and huge ability to kind of, bring that land back into the public realm here. 23,000 potential job creation, 3.8 billion injected in Ontario's economy. That is specific to the job creation, economic development side, not specific to the infrastructure. So the infrastructure, another element that we feel like will drive that number up past the 5 billion mark. and then 3.4 kilometers of Ontario waterfront reactivated. HC is coming in to work with Steelport on basically envisioning an energy strategy for this parcel that mimics the success of our downtown system. And what that looks like, and excuse my big schematic here, but I will walk through it in pieces, is again, it's taking all the best parts of what we have downtown and just, like Jeff said, making them a lot bigger, stretching them out. So core to this idea is in the center here, you've got three key elements. You've got a substation, which is a typical electrical substation / utility metering system. You've got a microgrid and a district energy system. Those are the exact same two assets we just talked about in the prior two slides around what we have in downtown Hamilton. And then we've got this idea of a control room. You're bringing in, natural gas and electricity, just like you would for a typical development of this scale. But then where the magic happens in terms of driving these value creation is actually around this energy generation asset. So this is just like the cogen that I talked about that we have downtown, as well as the heating boilers and the chillers. We've got all of these assets behind the meter at Steelport. And that's creating value such as we have this idea of this integrated energy benefit. So we're doing a peak power reduction where we're reducing the peak power demands of this entire parcel by leveraging on-site generation in the form of renewables, solar, wind, potentially battery storage as well. And then that is being used to curtail electrical demand during peak periods. We're also, and this is something that Trevor alluded to as a key part of Hamilton's industrial decarbonization strategy, is we're capturing waste heat. And the idea associated with capturing waste heat is that, certain energy demands, such as a data center or a steel manufacturing facility like ArcelorMittal Dofasco, generate a ton of waste heat. And just to give a sense of order of magnitude, there is more waste heat being generated at ArcelorMittal Dofasco to heat all of Hamilton and most of Burlington and Oakville. And that's just because their processes run at such high temperatures that when they're done using that heat for making steel, running sub-processes, et cetera, the outputs are still in the hundreds of degrees Celsius. So far higher, too low for what they need, but very, very good for building, heating, domestic hot water, other sources of demands. So the idea of waste energy capture is you can take that waste heat, which normally would go up the stack into the environment. You can capture it in a district system. You can use it as a generation asset. And this is a core element to both Steelport and how we reduce the total energy demands of that system, as well as how we decarbonize the rest of Hamilton potentially. So some of you may be aware that HC prior to getting super involved in Steelport was looking at this idea of the energy harvesting initiative. It was a multi-year study where we worked with various partners in the industrial Bayfront, including Dofasco, Steelport, Slate that is, and other commercial entities, to basically establish a commercialization and business model plan for supplying waste energy from the industrial portlands to the district energy system that I talked about in the prior slides. The idea being if we could capture that waste heat, bring it to downtown Hamilton, we could essentially fully decarbonize all of our heating on the district system, and also drive affordability, because that waste heat is normally treated as a complete waste product, right? So the idea that we could pay Dofasco for it kind of helps us justify a lower cost being passed on to customers, because currently they assign no value to it. So this initiative just came to fruition. We just finished the final report, and we're proud to announce that it will be released in June. And core to this is the idea that if we can establish Steelport as one beachfront, beachhead in the industrial portlands, and then continue to develop the downtown energy system, it would only make sense that at some point in the future you connect the two. And that was really the core premise of this initiative, and we're very excited to get it in everyone's hands in a few weeks. So taking a step back and just trying to quickly wrap this up so we can get some questions. Creating Hamilton's energy advantage really looks at maximizing Steelport's potential to develop resilient integrated community energy infrastructure. What that means is maximizing private sector investment to create jobs, increase tax revenue for the city, but then also, most importantly, fund an integrated energy system plan that can then start this investment cycle that attracts future private sector investment based on the advantages that energy infrastructure creates. mainly being cost certainty, decarbonization, and resiliency. And then this also creates a roadmap for establishing Canada's thermal corridor, which is that energy harvesting initiative I talked about earlier that connects the industrial waterfront to downtown to decarbonize the rest of downtown Hamilton using a district energy system. So with that, I will pass it off to questions. I put some key takeaways here just to kind of spur any discussion that we feel is warranted. And then I've also put at the bottom there my contact information, like Jeff mentioned. We're really excited to come today and to speak with everyone, and also to stir this conversation, but also continue the conversation with a lot of like-minded individuals. So we really appreciate it. If you have thoughts, if you have questions, if you have concerns, reach out to me directly. We're happy to kind of start that dialogue. And with that, Sylvia, I'll pass it back to you to maybe just run through the Q&A portion.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. So this brings us to our Q&A portion. I think we might have time for 1 or 2 questions. So how it works is please raise your hand if you have a question, and then we will call upon you to unmute your microphone and ask your question and possibly a follow-up if you have one. So I do see one hand up from Margaret Fazio. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. And what great presentation. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask, when you're talking about plans for building the bayfront or the harborfront area up with the grid, and then connecting to the downtown, what time frames are you looking at for that?
That's a great question. I think a big part of that long-term vision is predicated on the establishment of kind of growth at both Steelport and downtown. So I think, like, in our view, the Steelport project, if we want to see it kind of take off in this integrated strategy like we've shown, it would be the next 6 to 12 months where that plan would start to get laid. And that would include, working with planning, working with the broader team here to basically get the approvals to get the infrastructure built at Steelport. Similar time horizons for the district energy system downtown, where in the next 6 to 12 months, we're looking to start a few expansion efforts. I think depending how that looks, Margaret, in the next, let's call it 3 to 5 years, I think that would then influence that decision to work at connecting the two in a 5 to 10 year horizon. I think, I'll be honest, I may be a bit ambitious with that. Some people may say that that is too quickly, but I think that's kind of how we see it rolling out, where it's like we need to establish the value proposition both downtown and at Steelport for this type of integrated approach. Once that is really proven out in a 3 to 5 year horizon, I think that will then warrant future investment on kind of connecting everything together. And that's, I hope hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. I have a second question if I'm allowed, unless someone else has the first question still.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Thank you. So for both Trevor Imhoff and for Ryan Roger, I appreciate the sources of energy that you've just described, but then you were alluding to other sustainable energy sources for the district energy, or the downtown component to grow into more sustainable means of energy sources. And so I'm just wondering, how do you and when do you envision that happening? What sources have been considered? Where would they be? Like, if you're looking at solar power, what would you be looking at? Like, if you can just give us a little bit of a big picture view of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Trevor, you don't mind, maybe I'll just talk about the downtown energy system, and then I can pass to you if you feel like I miss anything. But I think one of the big opportunities with the downtown energy infrastructure, both the microgrid and the district energy system, is it's actually coming up to a renewal period. So the downtown energy system was first commissioned in 2003. So it's been about 25 years. So boilers need to be replaced. We need to basically look at replacing some of the chillers, building out that new strategy. And I think the value of that is it creates a lot of opportunity. So the short-term plan is basically to look at how do we get more carbon-friendly or carbon-positive sources of heating put in place at the downtown energy system, because that's our big source of emissions. The cooling runs off the grid. The grid is relatively clean. I know it's getting dirtier, but it's still better than natural gas boilers. So we're looking at heat pumps. We're looking at electric boilers. We're looking at potentially getting into geothermal, which would require us to reduce our temperatures. The plan is to have that plan in place, or at least slightly scoped by the end of the year, just around like what avenues we have available to us, and then look at getting approval to start that, transition of our current infrastructure to that renewable state. That's on the heating side. On the electrical side, battery storage is a big proponent of that. We're looking at different options for that. Part of that conversation is tied to getting approvals around fire safety, looking at different chemistries that work better with concerns that there are on that end of the spectrum, but also more importantly, looking at solar. Slightly, solar's tough because without the battery storage, it's hard to get consistency with it. So how do we get the storage component nailed down first, and then dovetail in other renewables that we can kind of use with that to get some certainty. But just for timelines, end of this year is when we're hoping to start scoping that out, and then looking to implement in the subsequent time. Jeff, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, great question, Margaret. One other thing is we've actually already started in some ways every day today, up to today. We're trying to get our customers to use less of our energy. It's funny enough, right? Is we're one of the very few providers out there that actually encourage our customers to use less. Because if they use less, what it means is that the buildings are becoming more efficient of the energy that's currently being delivered today. And that in turn becomes the first step. And that you do achieve some emissions reductions there. And then what that does is that sets up the location well for them when we start to look towards the fuel switching, when we start to take a look at incorporating other, as everything that Ryan mentioned, into the system. But it's not that we necessarily have to wait until we make the large capital investment into that new piece of condensing boilers, electrification, other types of storage technology. Is we're actively working with the folks like the art gallery, we're actively working with the convention center, we're working with the concert hall, we're working with the arena. We'd love to work with the city, talking about City Hall, the library, and these other properties to actually all get them to use less of our service. And that's it seems kind of counterintuitive, right? But then that's where it comes back to how we are looking towards generating value back to the city.
So sorry. So I just, on that note, are you also encouraging your customers to start feeding into the grid? So encouraging them to, say, put solar panels on their rooftops or anything like that?
I think we'd look into it. I think part of it would be depending how the answer is yes, we would. I think the interesting part that HC could play here is rather than having our customers have to deal with all of the administration of running that and feeding back in, us being the middleman. So us being the person who actually maybe owns that asset on behalf of the customer, uses it to step down their demands, like Jeff said, from our system. I think they get the direct cost benefit from that.
And we work with systems like that today over at McMaster Innovation Park as an example. McMaster Innovation Park is an idea of an integrated energy system, a low temperature energy system, leveraging geothermal, leveraging solar thermal, leveraging high efficiency condensing boilers. It's an example of a system that's grown over time to incorporate a variety of technologies to try and be the most efficient it can be.
I'll just quickly jump into, because I see Kelly and I want to get to her question as well. I know we only have 4 minutes from a city side, and Margaret, happy to follow up with you as well. But I mean, I would point you to our green building standards, our draft green building standards. We've been working very closely with planning staff around requiring buildings, for example, to be built with solar ready roofs, not to install solar, but at least have that roof load potential. I would also pose the question to everyone here in planning and economic development, because you hopefully have seen the benefit of district energy, and it's part of our Office of Climate Change Initiative's goal to work with other city departments and divisions to help HC expand the district energy system, because Jeff and Ryan can talk way more than I can about this, but the more that they can expand their customer base, the more affordable it will be to decarbonize everything. So really growing that customer base is an important objective, I think, hopefully of all of ours.
Thank you, Margaret, for your question. I think we have time for one more, and I've seen Kelly V has been very patient. Kelly, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks. That was a great presentation, very informative. I'm going to throw these two things out here, answer what you can. So I'm just wondering about the future of the property at Sir John A. Macdonald. To the best of my knowledge, it's not a city asset. It's owned by the public school board. And then the other thing is I'm wondering about connections that you're trying to make for the private sector for all of these towers that are going up in our downtown core that would probably be included in this perimeter of the current system.
I can quickly speak to the second point there. So the connections we're looking to work with right now is we're in talks with a lot of developers around York and Vine Street, so just north of where the current property is. The reason for that is just we see there's a huge growth potential there to add close to 1.5 million to 2 million square feet. So that's one avenue that's currently being explored. The other one that's being explored is between James and Houston, just between Main and King, right next to, if you know where Red Church Coffee is, and all those fine establishments on that block right next to Gore Park. So that's another block we're looking to explore and get connection to. I think if we can get those two elements, it'll help set the stage for wider expansions, both in the north, but also east, southeast direction of kind of where our grid is today. I'd like to get those scoped within the end of the year. So we're working very closely with those developers on that, as well as getting a few other tours set up with the West End Home Builders and Leuna and a few other folks in the area who, to your point, are actively looking to start projects. And then on the property side, Jeff, I'm not sure if you want to quickly talk through that and the kind of the conversations we're having with Hamilton Wentworth.
Yeah, we're actively engaged with the school board right now, and actually have received they've received approval from their board to enter into discussions about actually separating off a portion of property that the district energy system actually is housed on today, and that's a process that we have underway with the school board. We're actively engaged with the city as well too, working with Ray Kessler's team, whatnot. And there's a process that needs to follow. And we actually are actively underway right now to either try and acquire directly the property, or taking a look at establishing a new long-term agreement there that's going to work with the evolution of that property. That whole Sir John A land will go under a more holistic redevelopment strategy. The district energy system can be incorporated into that. There is a long-term pathway and a life cycle to incorporate whatever may happen long-term into that site, but it certainly starts with what you highlighted, is about having the ownership to be able to make sure that we can drive that pathway. So that's actually underway. I'm hoping we have that sorted out within the next 18 months or so.
Great, thank you. That's all the time we have for today. Lynda, Trevor, Jeff, Ryan, thank you very much for this very informative presentation. And thank you everybody for being great audience members. Keep an eye out for our next Lunch and Learn on June 16th, where staff from the LRT project office will be providing an update about the exciting work they have been working with Metrolinx and creating the LRT project. It's in the works. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of exciting information that will be shared. That's June 16th, and an invitation will be announced in the next PED Stuff newsletter. So thank you to our speakers again.
You know what? I would just like to say, please reach out, engage with us if you can. We really would love to pull on the collective wisdom of everybody on this team. I don't claim to have all the answers to everything, but I know there's a lot of knowledge that exists within this group that we would love to be able to learn from. So please, we're always in Hamilton. I'm always at City Hall in and around, so would love to continue the discussions and engagement.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.